All in Sports Network. We love sports.
The Fever have an official tampon.
They do.
How does that make you feel?
It doesn't make me feel good. I do feel a little bit better after finding out, that it's from Stanford doctors, right? Or something? Okay.
No, it was a Stanford student project.
Oh.
Yeah.
That's really cool. Okay. Yeah.
And
it's that's like what I'm saying. It's pretty cool.
Like at first,
I love the connection with Lexi and Stanford.
The first Lexi was like.
I had no idea. I had I'm so glad that they came back and did kind of like a follow-up commercial with it.
It was like a 90s, like the more you know kind of thing. It was like, oh, I just got my period. And like went into the whole thing, and it kind of made it better because like she went to Stanford and she's smart and she has smart people. It's the first like tampon redesign ever. Yeah,
that's pretty impressive.
Time. So pretty good. Fever might need it to stop the bleeding, though, that they just incurred. I am Kevin. This is my wife, Alexis, and we are happy to present All Indiana Sports as part of the All In Sports and Rogue Media Sports Networks. They might not like us after that.
Yes, welcome back in. That was disgusting. The Fever had their worst shooting performance. That's hard to say. They had their worst shooting performance and lowest scoring game of the season, as I saw another lead just slip out of their grasp against the Valkyries. Let's go on.
Yes, reminder, we do have now a TikTok and Instagram at All Indiana Sports, and the Twitter did not let us do that long, so we're All Indie Sports.
I kind of like that, though.
I know. I like to keep it all the same, but
I get
it. Not much you can do there. So, Caitlin Clark was back.
I was good to see her back. I was really, really happy to see her back.
Slightly more measured minutes, 25 minutes of total play.
I totally expected that, though.
It seemed like her rotation, she was on a different rotation.
Yeah.
And so it didn't allow cohesiveness in the rotations and things like that. She had 10 points, 6 assists, and 5 rebounds, 4 turnovers.
Yeah. I think that, looking back on that, though, I kind of have watched a couple of different things since the game a little bit, and I think that there very well could. I mean, there was definitely she needed to work on gelling again and figuring out what that looks like as a team. It takes she's been gone for a good chunk of the time, so it's going to take some time for her to be able to jump back in and be a part. But what I think I actually saw a little bit more was Caitlin came back on a fast track.
Okay.
I think they had slipped back to a slower speed.
Yeah.
And I think that's why we saw this jump and rise in Natasha Howard's play.
You did bring that up.
Because it was a little bit slower and she could handle a little bit. Caitlin didn't come back slower. She came back same speed Caitlin.
Yeah.
And that, I definitely saw on her face that, okay, this is a lot. This is what this feels like. So I think that they played her just enough. I'm sure she would have loved to have been out there more, but anyway, that's kind of my 2 cents. I think that she came back pretty fast and normal Caitlin speed. Her shots were definitely not falling. But I think she came back on a really healthy speed for coming back off of an injury. And I just think the team had slipped back into being comfortable maybe. And she was like, come on, let's get going.
I don't know. I mean, I get brought up the locker room thing. I brought up that did they really need her because it seems like they've been playing better without her. And then she comes back and it's the worst performance of the season.
I don't know.
I get it. I know what you're going to say, that sometimes you just have to rise to the level that she is at. And
it takes time again.
And it takes
time. And I think, AB, I don't think that she was far off. I think she could have been. There was some sloppiness in between things, and it was, and Valkyries definitely made it hard to be able to,
Yeah, she only had 6 points.
I know that's not like her.
What? Only 2 of 8 shooting from the field. Yeah. So, takes some time to get back into having your star player back. Speaking of time, this was an odd time. noon game.
I know.
Eastern.
It was really weird.
On a Wednesday, it's their annual kids game.
Gotcha.
And
Well, that makes
so,
sense.
Unfortunately,
Kid-friendly.
Unfortunately, they played a little bit like kids
They
tonight or today. They only had 2 other players in double figures. That was Kelsey Mitchell with 12 and Michaela Timpson with 10s. A lot of that coming in junk time there toward the end, but
still,
we've seen that rise from Timpson
doesn't
over
matter.
the past
That's
couple
good play
games.
time for her. Like, it doesn't matter.
What do you feel? How do you think about Ari McDonald in the starting lineup, continuing with that, with Caitlin Nen, and then Lexi now getting a spot on the bench?
Yeah,
I
I definitely think that. Honestly, I was totally fine with that whole lineup. I think Lexi can handle being on the bench. I think that doesn't affect her. Like, she's like, whatever, this is what it is. And I've said often that I don't know that our starting 7 is necessarily our strongest players either. And I think that they kept Ari on because she has done a good job and she deserved to be in that starting lineup. Just because, that star Caitlin Clark is back doesn't mean that she should miss her spot on the starting. So I think that was a really good thing for them to do for her.
Yeah. Unfortunately, she only went 1 for 7 from 3-point. But honestly, whole game, just that nothing was falling.
Yeah.
There was no rhythm.
For anybody, really.
Like Sophie hit a big 3.
Yeah.
I
was like, okay, here we go.
Caitlin had a big 3.
Yeah.
And then, but there was never a rhythm.
Lexi was struggling.
Just
get
it going where you could have consecutive trips where you get a stop in a bucket, in a bucket. And credit to the Valkyries, one of the top defenses, what they've been able to do, as they mentioned in the broadcast, as an expansion team. Pretty incredible. Kate Martin had like 5 straight to kind of end the run that the Fever.
Yeah, she was fire. I think that I think that she's an underestimated player. I think she's fantastic. I think she's a fire player, and she is just she may not have like the boisterous personality that Caitlin has, but she is definitely she is a calm, steady, cool leader, and I love to watch her. It was a lot of fun to watch her play too. So I do have to give a little bit of a shout out to Timpson. I was impressed with her during today. I think I don't, when you're thinking about players, and you have some that are really good leaders and you have others that are good followers, and she is definitely a follower, and I don't think that is necessarily a disadvantage for her, because she is really she is somebody who, has a consistent play. She's always going to be good and reliable and consistent. And she was really working hard. But I think that she's going to be a really fun player to watch, is what I was going to say. What my little shout out is, because I think once they get their rhythm back and they're figuring out what that looks like as a team with Caitlin back and things like that, she's going to rise to that level of play. And I think she's going to be a weapon, possibly. So.
And she kind of had her struggles as early as she was in there, but it came on. She's so athletic.
I was impressed.
At her size, that she's a really good outlet and availability for a dump off in the lane. Kelsey Mitchell driving the lane. I know they had a little mix up there about giving some space, but Kelsey, I think, was in the right. She needed more space, but then also that space draws that defender out, gives Kelsey more room. But also, if the defender decides to come down and double, now she's got a kick out, not to a 3, but on the baseline, kind of soft jumper,
get it in.
And so I agree. Plus her rebounding presence, her defensive ability to block shots and be a rim protector, is one of the things that was lacking last season, honestly. Especially with Temi out, and again, Temi now with the Valkyries, and you see what she's able to do when she's healthy. So
well, and I think that this with Timpson being able to put her in there, that gives AB a little bit of a different, maybe where she plays on the court.
Yeah.
She has a really wide range that she could pull into the team a little bit more, depending on what the team is needing. You know, I think that every year it takes a while sometimes to figure out that rhythm and everything. So I think that that gives the AD a little bit different type of leadership on the floor, and she can kind of, you know, direct traffic a little differently. So I love that they, you know, have that ability to do that within the bench.
Yeah. Overall, Fever led by 9 in the first quarter, down by 8 then at half, cut it to 5 in the third quarter, but then kind of hit the wall in the fourth quarter. So where do they go from here with Caitlin and trying to figure out this new rhythm with her back in there and things?
I think that the time that they have between games here, they really have to be working on timing, and I think that is something that they have missed, that is slowed down as a team, and they're not used to maybe Caitlin's speed back up into, because you can practice it and she can practice with them, but when she and you can ask anybody, they have said this about her, she's a completely different player when it comes to gameplay. And most dynamic players they're definitely different. So you can practice it all day long, but when you're in play, it's completely different. So.
And it's almost like you could see it in a trickled down effect, because everyone's passing was a little bit off in their positions and where they expected the other players to be.
Yes, that's why I said it's kind of like sloppy in the middle, right?
Not just in Caitlin, but
that communication.
You know, just that flow of everything kind of was.
And give it out to the Valkyries. They did a great job, like jumbling that up and like, oh, okay, we see that there's an issue here, so let's make that kind of chaotic for them.
They did good. They did good in their shot clock, you know, in their traps, and when they would do that, and the timing of those game situations. So credit to them. Well, that's all the time that we got for today. We'll be back on Friday as Sophie Cunningham attempts to protect her new teammate Caitlin Clark against Brittany Griner, her old one. This will be the final matchup with the Atlanta Dream this season. Then we'll be back on Sunday with the first Caitlin Clark Paige Beckers WNBA matchup.
That's fun. This is Alexis.
And this is Kevin.
Reminding you to stay all Indiana.
All in Sports Network. We love sports.